Discover the incredible life of Ramses II, 10 surprising transformations that shaped history. Jamie Foster felt the weight of the dusty old school attic pressing down on her. Stacks of forgotten memories, abandoned texts, curled posters sat in corners, remnants of better days. She rummaged through the boxes, feeling the stale air suffocating her enthusiasm for teaching history. Why did her students care about the past when they were consumed by the distractions of today? The community of Millfield was struggling, jobs lost, families divided, and reality seemed to crush any flicker of hope she tried to ignite in her classroom. With trembling fingers, Jamie brushed aside cobwebs and moved aside boxes, half-heartedly searching for something to freshen up her tired curriculum until her hand grazed something different. It was a roll of ancient scrolls. She unfurled them, heart racing, as words about Ramses II spilled forth, detailing 10 transformations that shaped not only a ruler but an enduring legacy. This figure, once remote and unimportant, suddenly loomed larger than life. Jamie felt a spark flicker, but doubt crept in. Would discussing Ramses' resilience in the face of adversity truly resonate? Or would it drown amid the facts of test scores and college applications? While her mind raced, disbelief churned within her like a storm. Could Ramses' story, a tale of grit against societal disdain, mirror her battle to engage disinterested teenagers? A sharp pang of longing twisted in her chest. She craved to share this revelation, to make history breathing and relevant, yet she often felt invisible in the hallways, overwhelmed by what others deemed critical, popularity over scholastic merit. And just as panic threatened to drag her under, she saw Luis in the back row during last week's class, his brow furrowed, determination etched onto his features despite the dismissive snickers surrounding him. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Luis's struggles, the weight of his family's expectations, the pressure of his job, the want to succeed mirrored Ramses' own trials. This connection sparked a wild determination in Jamie's heart. She resolved to launch a project about students' family histories, not merely to enrich the class but to show them how their roots were intertwined with those who came before them. But would the administration permit such a divergence from established norms? She felt the skepticism already biting at her. Many saw history as a collection of dry events, not the emotional stories of resilience and triumph she envisioned. As rocks piled upon her in the form of disapproval, Jamie wrestled with despair. Creativity felt stifled. Yet, she had Luis's quiet resolve resounding within her. Would she retreat into complacency or confront the pushing tide of resistance? And when the community caught wind of her innovative ideas, would they reject her determination with bitterness? With a deadline looming just beyond the horizon, Jamie knew one truth: every moment counted. And as she stood at this precipice, the journey ahead held more than history. It was a confrontation with everything she believed in, every ounce of doubt coiling around her resolve. The tempest was building, a reckoning was coming. What would happen when she finally stood her ground? The uncertainty clutched at her throat, a tight reminder that history didn't only belong to the pages of books, it lived and breathed through her, and not all stories were safe to tell. Jamie paced her living room, her mind buzzing with the thought of how to develop her project while knowing the potential backlash. The scent of brewed coffee curled around her, yet it felt bitter on her tongue. With every sip, she considered how this idea could either rejuvenate her teaching or tear her down. A project on personal histories could challenge not just her students, but the very foundation of how history was perceived in her school. The evening sun cast long shadows across the walls, illuminating the remnants of her determined spirit. Ideas flared in and out of focus, each one scrutinized against her fears of the administration's response. She envisioned her proposal, a presentation interweaving personal narratives with historical frameworks. Students would interview family members, unearthing tales of struggle and resilience that echoed Ramses II's narrative. But deep-seated anxiety gnawed at her, urging her to question if this would simply lead to more skepticism rather than inspire engagement. Despite the storm of hesitation in her mind, a flicker of hope tugged at her. She recalled Luis's determination in class. If he could express vulnerability in an environment that often marginalized him, then she could surely do the same. She rifled through her notes, jotting down the emotional connections she imagined her students would uncover, stories of hardship, sacrifice, and perseverance. Her chest constricted as she thought about how that day in front of her class would unfold. Would students respond with eagerness or raise brows laden with disbelief? They were accustomed to learning through rote memorization, and now she was advocating for raw, personal storytelling. It felt revolutionary, yet frighteningly vulnerable. She feared the rejection that might come from both her students and her colleagues. But then she remembered Ramses, who evolved through trials, not despite them. In her confrontation with the administrative committee, she would be sharing not just history but her passion, a passion she had long neglected in the shuffle of standardized education. The thought spurred a decision. She needed to act. Jamie grabbed her phone and began drafting the proposal. She would lay out her vision clearly, focus on how personal narratives could enhance understanding of historical events. As she typed, each word solidified her resolve. The lives of her students had been obscured, kept at a distance from the powerful history they were studying. This needed to change. With the proposal complete, she leaned back in her chair and felt the swell of an unfamiliar confidence. She could navigate this path. The blend of history and personal narratives was not just a pedagogical shift, it was an emotional one, a coming together of past and present. But doubts clawed back fiercely. What if her ideas were dismissed outright? What if the administration saw this as a frivolous venture, one that deviated from curriculum standards she had followed for so long? Tension surged within her, and the shadows in her room seemed to grow darker with doubt. The moment she stepped into that conference room to present her proposal would be pivotal. The stakes had risen higher than she had ever considered. As she took a deep breath to calm her apprehension, she contemplated the words of Ramses' resilience, courage, and legacy. If he could leave a significant mark on history despite overwhelming odds, then she, too, could strive to carve out her own legacy in education. The time had come to face her fears directly. With an urgent need for action and her heart pounding in her chest, Jamie resolved to present her proposal the next morning. Would she emerge emboldened, or would doubt bring her crashing down? As the night deepened, the answer felt tantalizingly close yet agonizingly distant. Jamie awoke with the dawn light filtering through her curtains, illuminating her resolve in a way that felt entirely new. The remnants of her night's turmoil lingered, an anxious knot in her stomach, but as she dressed, the act itself seemed to bolster her determination. Gone was the suffocating shroud of doubt that had weighed so heavily on her heart. Today, she would not just present a proposal, she would reclaim her passion for teaching. She arrived at school early, the hallways eerily quiet. The contrast to the chaos in her mind was striking, causing her thoughts to whirl even faster. As she set her belongings down at her desk, she took a moment to scan the classroom, a space filled with empty desks and untouched textbooks, wondering how it could transform under the weight of the narratives her students would share. 15 minutes later, she stood outside the conference room, the knot in her stomach tightening again. She could already hear the faint murmur of voices inside as the administration convened. This was it. This was the moment she had rehearsed countless times in her mind. With a deep breath, Jamie pushed open the door, her heart racing in her chest. The room fell silent, all eyes turned towards her. She could feel the weight of their scrutiny but pressed on, steeling herself against the uncertainty that threatened to seep back in. Jamie began her presentation with the passion that had reignited during the night, illustrating her vision of intertwining personal stories with historical accounts. Imagine, she said, her voice steady yet infused with enthusiasm, each student uncovering a piece of their family history, connecting with the past in a profound way. She could see a few skeptical faces in the crowd, but she pushed through, passionately explaining how this project could engage the students on emotional levels that textbooks never could. Midway through, she noticed a gentle smile from Ms. Harrow, the tougher member of the committee, which momentarily lifted the tension. She detailed how each narrative would not only reflect personal struggles but also resonate with significant historical events, creating a tapestry of intersection between the past and present. But then, as she neared the conclusion, that familiar wave of doubt crashed over her. What if they questioned her qualifications to pivot so dramatically away from the well-trodden curriculum? Jamie took a deep breath, her conviction bulging against the constraints of her fears. Some of the greatest leaders and influencers in history were not just scholars, she asserted, her voice gaining strength, they were storytellers. What if we gave our students the same voice? An awkward silence settled in as she concluded, waiting for feedback. Who would speak first? Would it be a rejection of her ideas or a challenge to the status quo? The committee members whispered among themselves, her heart hammered as she considered the gravity of their decision. Jamie, Ms. Harrow finally said, breaking the tension. While I appreciate your enthusiasm, can you address how this aligns with our assessment standards? It was the question Jamie feared the most. For a moment, the air went thick with uncertainty. Yet within that brief pause, she discovered a clarity she hadn't anticipated. Perhaps this was the very reason she had embarked on this journey. We can create a framework that aligns personal narratives with thematic units from history, all while meeting assessment guidelines. It's not about abandoning standards, it's about enriching them. As the meeting proceeded, Jamie found herself not just defending her proposal but expanding upon it, drawing on her experiences as an educator and even her vulnerabilities. The conversation flowed more naturally, and every positive nod from a committee member added to her burgeoning confidence. Finally, as the meeting drew to a close, she felt a stirring of hope, mingled with a profound realization. She was not just fighting for a project, she was advocating for the dignity of her students' stories, for their right to see themselves within history's narrative. As she exited the conference room, the air felt different, charged, almost electric. Whether or not the proposal gained approval, Jamie recognized that she was already undergoing transformation. The experience had pushed her beyond the confines of fear, sparking a sense of liberation in her teaching. Yet, uncertainty still lingered. Would the committee approve her initiative? And how would her students receive this ambitious framework when they finally engaged with it? With her heart still racing from the confrontation, Jamie knew the answers were on the horizon, just beyond the next challenge. The following days were a blur of anticipation and introspection for Jamie. Each morning, she awoke with the hopeful echoes of the committee's conversation lingering in her mind, but as evening approached, a nagging fear clawed at her, a fear of returning to the same monotonous ebb of traditional teaching. With time ticking, she channeled her energy into refining her proposal, laboring over every detail, every potential moment of feedback from the committee. Jamie immersed herself in educational literature, searching for studies that supported her narrative-driven approach. She found herself lost in the synergy of personal stories intertwined with academic rigor, her neurons firing with connections she hadn't fully realized before. In the evenings, she would sit at her dining table, scraps of paper strewn around like a chaotic tapestry of ideas. Each time she felt the pressure mounting, she turned to her own story, remembering the sheer joy her high school history teacher had ignited within her. Mrs. Nelson had transformed dry dates and events into thrilling journeys through time. Jamie wanted to evoke that same spark in her students. Through these reflections, a new resolve began to blossom. Jamie spent days crafting lessons that could bridge personal narratives with historical timelines, elucidating links that would not merely meet assessments but elevate students' personal connections to their education. She meticulously curated a list of authors, poets, and storytellers whose lives could align with the themes she planned to introduce. The excitement of creativity replaced her anxiety, even as uncertainty remained. Yet, in the quiet moments of night, doubts still lurked. What if the students rejected her methods? What if they found the scaffolding of history too rigid to bend to their experiences? The prospect of their disapproval became a shadow looming over her aspirations, a dissonance between her vision and the reality of the classroom experience ahead. One late afternoon, the bell signaled the end of school, and the usual clamor of students spilled out into the hallways. Jamie watched the familiar chaos unfurl, caught in a reverie of hope balancing on the precipice of anxiety. She headed towards the empty classroom where she had conducted her presentation, the air thick with the remnants of her assertion about storytelling. She decided to test her ideas during her next lesson, uncertain yet convinced it was time to relay the urgency of the narrative approach to her students. But as she began drafting out her lesson plan, the turmoil of self-doubt unexpectedly crept back in, forcing her to confront the potential fallout if things did not proceed as planned. That evening, while drafting her lesson, Jamie received an unexpected email from Ms. Harrow. The subject line sent a jolt down her spine: anticipated approval of your proposal. As she opened it, her heart raced with apprehension. Ms. Harrow appreciated Jamie's efforts to align her vision with curriculum expectations and expressed the committee's decision to grant initial approval for a pilot program. However, there was an added layer of expectation: she must also prepare for an unannounced observation meeting in 2 weeks, where she would need to showcase the framework in action. Jamie dropped her head into her hands, wrestling simultaneously with exhilaration and dread. This was what she had wanted, yet the prospect of execution loomed as daunting as a storm cloud gathering on the horizon. She could now bring her vision to life, but how would her students respond? Would they find the courage to share their true stories, or would they shy away from the vulnerability her approach demanded? The weight of expectations hung heavier, propelling Jamie into a mental whirlwind, a mixture of determination and fear of inadequacy. As she prepared for the pivotal days ahead, she recognized that she was not just trying to instruct, she was on the cusp of transformation, not only for her students but for herself as well. The moment to align her passion with her practice had finally arrived, and Jamie felt the thrilling pinch of urgency enveloping her. She had 2 weeks to prepare, to fine-tune her lessons, and to foster an environment where stories would not just be told but lived. Her ultimate test loomed, a challenge that would set the trajectory for both her proposal and her teaching philosophy. As the dawn of that pivotal observation day drew closer, Jamie felt the thrill of possibility, but also a gnawing anxiety about what awaited on the other side of that classroom door. How would the first trial of her transformational journey unfold? Would her students surprise her, or would she face a different kind of reckoning? Jamie awoke the following morning, her mind still spinning from the implications of the committee's approval. The sun's rays filtered through her window, illuminating the reading materials and lesson plans she had amassed over the past few days. Today marked 1 week until the observation meeting, and the weight of it settled uncomfortably across her shoulders. With determination nudging her forward, she settled into her routine. She arrived at school earlier than usual, the quiet halls amplifying the rhythm of her heartbeat. The classroom, with its blank canvas, beckoned her to fill it with vibrant stories. Jamie took a deep breath, letting the familiar scent of chalk and freshly opened textbooks ground her. She began arranging her planned activities, envisioning transitions from historical narratives to student interactions. Yet, as she paced around the room, she confronted a growing sense of inadequacy, a disappointment that her ideas might not resonate with the students as she envisioned. Would they engage? Or would they stare blankly at her, much like they did when she introduced the last less exciting unit? The thought lingered like an unwelcome guest, pushing Jamie to reassess. In an act of accountability, Jamie decided to divide her lesson preparation into segments. Each day of the week would feature a particular aspect of narrative: Monday for storytelling techniques, Tuesday for historical relevance, and so forth. This structure would not only help organize her thoughts but also alleviate anxiety by transforming the mountain of work into manageable hills. On Monday, she dissected various storytelling methods, sharing anecdotes from her own life. She remembered a time in college when she stood before a classroom, gripping the sides of a podium as she attempted to convey the depths of a historical figure's life. This memory ignited a spark, reminding her how effective personal anecdotes could be when woven into academic discourse. As the school day wore on, Jamie gradually began to intersperse her lessons with interactive elements. By Thursday, she piloted the first of her narrative exercises. Students would share personal stories while linking them to historical events they were learning. With each moment in class, she could tangibly feel students' initial hesitancy melting away, replaced by genuine curiosity. But just as her hope flourished, a competing fear echoed through her thoughts. What if they felt their stories were too mundane? Would they see the connection between their lives and the vast timeline of history? Jamie panicked when faced with the inevitable feedback. She decided she would have to create a safe space, an environment where vulnerability felt encouraged rather than terrifying. Jamie convened a circle where students could share the frameworks of their stories without fear of disapproval. "I won't be grading you on creativity," she explained, "but rather on your willingness to connect your experiences to what we are learning." Pushing down her own anxieties, she keenly observed her students, hoping to see a glimpse of the transformation she desired not just for them, but for herself. As the final bell sounded, the students filtered out, their laughter echoing down the hall. Jamie was left in the hush of an empty classroom, the lessons she had tried out still fresh in her mind. She felt an unusual sense of empowerment. She had taken steps toward change that felt authentic and aligned with her vision. But just as she was about to close her notes for the day, a slip of paper caught her attention on the corner of her desk. It was from a student, a request to speak about a personal experience tied to the next historical figure they would study. The student's handwriting trembled, revealing the fear that still lingered just beneath the surface of their emerging courage. This moment sent a ripple of introspection through Jamie. Her heart yearned to embrace this challenge, yet a shadow of doubt pulled at her. Could she handle the weight of this responsibility? Was she prepared for the realities of her students' vulnerabilities? The clock reminded her that time was slipping away, and there was only 1 week left until the meeting. Jamie felt her resolve waver, the excitement of her plan colliding with the fear of revealing deeper truths. As she collected her belongings, she understood she stood at a critical juncture in her own development as an educator, a transformative moment not just for her students, but for her very self. Amid the swirling thoughts, a question echoed sharper than others: how would she navigate this journey of unveiling stories, both hers and her students'? As Jamie left her classroom, not knowing what awaited, the weight of her aspirations pressed on her soul. What uncharted territory might her students unexpectedly traverse, and how would she guide them through it? As dawn broke the next day, Jamie awoke with a mixture of excitement and anxiety coursing through her veins. The image of the student's trembling handwriting stayed lodged in her mind, a tangible reminder of the stakes involved in her upcoming observation meeting. She couldn't shake the feeling that this venture extended beyond just her teaching. It felt as though she were peeling back layers of her own identity, exposing vulnerabilities she had long kept hidden. Arriving at school, Jamie was determined to push through her trepidation. She spent her morning refining her lesson plan, ambitiously integrating her own experiences alongside historical figures like Ramses II. How could she inspire her students to share, just as she had? The thought was liberating, yet paralyzing. In her first class of the day, she opened with a story of personal challenge. "When I first took the plunge into teaching, I felt overwhelmed by the expectations," she confessed. The students' eyes widened, their initial apathy momentarily replaced by curiosity. This ripple of engagement emboldened her. Perhaps her own struggles could resonate and ignite something within them. As the lesson unfolded, she introduced the topic of Ramses II, a king whose legacy was built on transformation and resilience. "Did you know he started as a warrior and became known for creating monumental temples?" Jamie posed, her voice rising in enthusiasm. She illustrated how Ramses' life mirrored the potential inherent in her students' experiences, each one of them capable of metamorphosis through their narratives. Yet, amidst the excitement, a nagging doubt pulsed around her. Would they truly see the parallels she laid out? Or would they retreat, fearing judgment once more? As the class transitioned into their own storytelling time, Jamie facilitated discussions in small groups, carefully weaving between them. She offered encouragement, prodding them gently to surface their thoughts. Some students dove in, sharing fragmented tales of triumph and struggle, while others held back, apprehension cloaking them like a veil. Jamie could feel the disappointment creeping in a stark contrast to the excitement earlier. How could she break through this barrier? It was clear she needed to do more than facilitate, she needed to embody the vulnerability she wanted from her students. That evening, after the last bell echoed through the empty halls, Jamie sat in her classroom surrounded by the artifacts of their discussions, each one a testament to untold stories. She took a deep breath and began writing in her journal, her thoughts forming a bridge to her students. She composed a personal narrative, a time in her life when fear defined her choices, blinding her potential. As she wrote, the act felt cathartic. Each word unburdened a piece of her, revealing the complexities of human experience in a way that would connect with her students. The next morning, Jamie decided to share this reflection with her class. As she recounted her story, her voice trembled but steadied. She risked revealing her own flaws and fears, questioning the assumptions she had so long clung to. If you think you don't have a story to tell, I assure you you do. We all do, she told them, meeting their eyes boldly. Slowly, the students began to open up. A boy at the back who had been silent throughout the previous sessions raised his hand, his voice shaking slightly. I've never told anyone this, but I felt like I had to hide who I was, he murmured. A wave of realization washed over Jamie. This moment was significant, not just teaching, but learning, understanding dreams, fears, and aspirations intertwined. She was on the brink of change for not just them, but for herself as well. As the class wrapped up, energy shifted in the room. They had established a fragile yet powerful connection, one that could grow if nurtured. Yet a rich, swirling doubt still loomed. Could she maintain this momentum? Would the rawness of these revelations sustain the fragile trust they had begun to build? The observation meeting was looming closer. And Jamie couldn't help but feel that the real test was about to unfold, one that didn't revolve around her teaching methods, but rather the authenticity of human connection. How would she take the next step into this uncharted territory, balancing her role as both educator and facilitator of personal growth? The answers lay ahead, waiting just beyond her grasp. The observation meeting arrived sooner than Jamie expected, casting a shadow over the progress she had made with her students. As the morning sun streamed through the classroom windows, illuminating the scattered papers and colored drawings, she felt an overwhelming surge of determination mixed with fear. This was her moment, not just to demonstrate her teaching abilities, but to reveal the transformative power of vulnerability and connection. As students filed in, Jamie sensed that something had shifted in the classroom dynamic. Laughter came easier, and glances exchanged between classmates seemed to hold newfound trust. Yet the weight of her impending evaluation loomed heavy. Each student was a testament to her recent efforts, and the thought of her performance now carried the weight of their blossoming potential. Today will be different, she affirmed silently, her thoughts racing as she prepared to introduce the day's lesson on Ramses II. Not just about the king, but about what we can learn from the struggles and stories we've shared. She decided then, to tweak her approach. Instead of remaining in the shadow of the observation, she would invite her students to co-create this space of learning, transforming the lesson into a narrative exploration. Let us start by discussing what transformation looks like in our lives, she proposed, her voice steady despite the tremor of her heart. What changes have you experienced that you wish to share? A flurry of hands shot up, and Jamie navigated through their stories with intent. A girl spoke about moving to a new town, a boy shared his experience of overcoming a fear of public speaking, while another reflected on overcoming academic struggles. Each narrative was a thread weaving into the fabric of their collective experience. Jamie felt each story resonating within her, each one further stripping away her need for perfection. As they moved toward the discussion of Ramses, Jamie engaged her class by connecting their individual transformations to the historical account. Ramses didn't build his legacy alone, he faced challenges, victories, and failures just like each of you, she said passionately. His ability to embrace change underscores the essence of his greatness. Amidst spirited conversations, Jamie caught the eye of the boy who had shared his concealed identity just days ago. He was now leaning forward, engaged, his once timid expression replaced with eagerness. It dawned on her that they were not just learning about history, they were cultivating resilience and identity, the very elements she sought to nurture. But even as she relished in this synergy, doubt slithered back into her mind. She could still picture the evaluators watching, scrutinizing. Would they appreciate the authenticity she had instilled? Would her approach resonate beyond the walls of her classroom? As the bell rang, signaling the end of the period, Jamie felt exhilarated but apprehensive. The students had shared not just their voices, but snippets of their souls. Yet, she questioned what impression their connection would leave during the formal observation. Would it translate into tangible praise, or would it be dismissed as mere enthusiasm? Taking a deep breath, she resolved to demonstrate this human-centered approach during her evaluation. She would showcase the students' stories and how they tied back into their learning experience. Jamie was ready to face the scrutiny, even if it meant exposing her vulnerabilities to not just her students, but to the evaluators as well. As she prepared for the meeting, an unexpected phone call disrupted her thoughts. The principal's name flickering on her screen felt like an omen, an unforeseen challenge up ahead. She hesitated, contemplating whether to answer or let the moment pass, but curiosity tugged at her. What news awaited her that could potentially alter the course of her day and perhaps even her life? The urgency of the moment engulfed her, leaving her to weigh the risk of uncertainty against the promise of growth. What awaited her on the other side of that call? Jamie steadied her hand, watching the phone ring as if it were a pendulum, swinging between the past and future, accountability and chance. The collective breath of her students echoed in her mind, a reminder of the risk she had taken to connect, to bear her vulnerabilities. With an impulsive decision, she pressed the green button. "Hello." Her voice was steady, though the uncertainty beneath it betrayed her. "Jamie, I hope I'm catching you at a good time," said Principal Torres, his voice a mingling of warmth and professionalism. "We need to discuss your observation." Her heart constricted. "Of course, is there a problem?" No, not at all." There was a pause on the other end. "Actually, I had a chat with the evaluators after your class today, and they highlighted some remarkable aspects they noticed. Your focus on student narratives. It made a significant impact." Joy surged through her, though it was shackled by apprehension. "But what specific feedback did they give?" "They were impressed by your innovative approach. You encouraged the students to open up, to confront their fears and struggles. It created a palpable energy in the room." Jamie's breath hitched, but the weight of the moment drew her back to her purpose. "However," the principal continued, "they did express some concerns about the traditional elements of your lesson plan being slightly overshadowed by the narrative focus." The praise felt tenuous, slipping away like water through her fingers. "I see," she replied, wrestling to balance her excitement with the principal's caution. "It's clear your heart is in the right place, Jamie. I think we can work together on this. I want you to take this feedback as an opportunity," he suggested encouragingly. Opportunity. The word reverberated in her mind. "Thank you, Principal Torres. I appreciate the feedback." After they hung up, Jamie stood in the dim light of her classroom, feeling a swell of mixed emotions, for every touch of achievement echoed a shadow of doubt. She had connected with her students in profound ways, yet the evaluator's concern about traditional metrics gnawed at her. Was she compromising her integrity as an educator by emphasizing connection over curriculum? Would this approach create a lasting impact, or merely be a fleeting moment of passion? Days passed as Jamie wrestled with those questions. She diligently revised her teaching methods, aiming to integrate factual content with emotional engagement. She began to draw parallels between historical figures and her students' lives, but each attempt felt laborious, and the spontaneity that had once flowed so freely began to spawn hesitation. During a particularly spirited discussion on the causes of historical change, Jamie noticed the students watching her, curious, awaiting her guiding signal. She hesitated before speaking, fighting against an internal barrage of doubt. Why was she afraid? Hadn't her earlier lesson breathed a new vitality into their learning? With a resolve stealing in her chest, Jamie announced, let us collaboratively create a timeline of events that changed our stories. We'll explore how each of you can draw lessons from historical legacies much like Ramses did. The students erupted with enthusiasm as they engaged in animated chatter, their eagerness jolting Jamie out of her self-imposed constraints. This was why she taught, she reminded herself, to cultivate voices, to spark dialogue, to explore the symbiosis between history and experience. Just as the energy surged, a hand shot up. It was the boy who had recently embraced his identity. "But Ms. Jamie, does our timeline have to look like a boring chart? Can we incorporate our own stories into how it's shaped?" Her heart raced at his question, a live wire igniting her creativity. "Absolutely. Let us make it as vivid as your experiences. You're the authors of this work, and I want it to reflect who you are." As the class dove into a flurry of collaborative work, a spark reignited in Jamie. Yet deep down, she felt the tension of her altered approach. Would she raise questions rather than answers in the evaluator's eyes? The bell rang again, signaling the end of the session, and as students rushed to the door, laughter echoing in their wake, Jamie felt hope blooming within her, a fragile, but persistent energy. However, just as she began to feel the potential of the moment, an email notification from the evaluators pinged on her screen. The words "immediate follow-up required" loomed ominously, a reminder of the uncertainty still lingering over her newfound path. Jamie's breath hitched as she opened the message, uncertainty firming her resolve. What awaited her in that email could redefine everything she was striving to create in her classroom. As Jamie stared at the email, her mind raced. The phrase "immediate follow-up required" felt like a stark command, a call to face the outcome of her innovative approach. Was she prepared to defend her decisions? She felt the weight of the previous week's classes pressing upon her, a mixture of pride and anxiety. The classroom was still buzzing with the afterglow of enthusiasm from her students. But now, in stark solitude, Jamie felt exposed. She had embraced the narrative-driven lessons to encourage her students to share their experiences and connect deeply with history, yet the evaluators could view it as a deviation from the prescribed curriculum. What had been a vibrant experiment in engagement now felt like a tightrope act. Jamie took a breath, seeking clarity amid the chaos of her thoughts. She could either retreat to the confines of a traditional method or stand firm in her belief that personal stories could enliven historical facts. But could she communicate that vision convincingly to the evaluators? Before she could second-guess herself further, she drafted a response, striving for a tone that was professional yet assertive. A sense of resolve enveloped her as she outlined her rationale for the changes, how she believed that fostering emotional connections not only engaged the students but also enhanced their understanding of historical events. With each word, Jamie found herself rediscovering what had initially ignited her passion for teaching. She recalled her own educational experiences where it was the stories that resonated beyond the classroom, the tales of grit, resilience, and transformation. She had wanted to recreate that, to instill both knowledge and empathy in her students. Just as she hit send, she felt an almost palpable shift within her. The act of confronting her fear lessened its hold. She had finally taken a stand, though trembling, for her vision, and that was more powerful than any spell of anxiety. The next morning, a response came from the evaluators. As Jamie read it, her heart raced. Their tone was constructive, yet critical. They commended her engagement with the students while emphasizing a need for balance. "While we appreciate your innovative techniques, we require clear alignment with curriculum standards," it read. Frustration bubbled beneath her skin. Their insistence on balancing creativity with metrics felt stifling. Did they not see the value in what she was doing? The students saw it, she felt it. Yet, immediately, doubt clawed at her resolve. Had she pushed too far? She decided to invite some of her students to the next faculty meeting, seeking their input on how they connected with the material. Their enthusiasm would be a testament to the effectiveness of her methods. Perhaps sharing their experiences would illuminate to the evaluators that her approach was not just a deviation but a necessary evolution. In the days leading up to the meeting, Jamie fostered discussions around the narratives they created, noting their passion and understanding as they explored the intersection of their lives and history. She was captivated by their insights and how they related historical transformations, like those of Ramses II, to their personal journeys. Each story solidified her purpose, reaffirming that this was the direction she needed to pursue. The day of the meeting arrived, each student's participation a vital piece of the narrative she sought to present. Would this showcase be enough to validate her perspective? Jamie's heart raced as she prepared to advocate not just for herself, but for the new learning landscape she was beginning to forge. The weight of expectation settled on her shoulders, but a spark of determination ignited within. As the meeting progressed and her students shared their narratives, Jamie felt the ground shift beneath her. But just as the tide began to turn in her favor, the evaluators posed a provocative question that unnerved her, leaving her struggling for a response. The question we need answered, Jamie, is whether this focus on personal storytelling detracts from the overall academic rigor we expect in the classroom. This was it. The moment that would define her path and either solidify her convictions or plunge her back into uncertainty. Jamie's heart pounded as she opened her mouth to speak. Would her answer be the breakthrough that reaffirmed her choices, or would it lead to a crossroads that tested everything she stood for as an educator? With her heart pounding in her chest, Jamie seized the moment to step back and think. The evaluator's question struck deeply. Scales of passion versus rigidity teetered in her mind, the tension between nurturing creativity and adhering to tradition looming precariously. She could feel the weight of her students' expectations on her shoulders, their eager faces vivid in her memory. Let me reframe this, she began, her voice steadying as she sought clarity. In history, we often discuss monumental figures like Ramses II as if their stories are isolated occurrences of greatness, but our students are living embodiments of that legacy. When we connect academic rigor to personal narratives, we're not detracting from rigor, we're enriching it. A palpable silence hung in the air, and Jamie pressed on, emboldened by her conviction. By inviting students to explore their own histories and connect them to the lessons we teach, we enhance their academic engagement. They don't just learn about the past, they become active participants in it, cultivating critical thinking and empathy. As she spoke, Jamie witnessed the evaluator's expressions shift from skepticism to contemplation. Each word she articulated felt like another thread weaving together a grander tapestry, demonstrating that personal stories could indeed coexist with a rigorous curriculum. When students are consumed by their own narratives, they invest themselves in the learning process, making connections that will resonate far beyond the classroom. This method honors their identities as learners and as individuals. Jamie could see the weight of her message taking root as she shared anecdotes from her classroom, recounting the shifts she had observed. My students are asking questions they've never asked before. They're drawing connections across time. Just the other day, when one student linked their family's struggle to a historical event, it wasn't just history anymore, it was alive. They're taking ownership of their education, and that's the kind of engagement we should celebrate. With every moment, the air shifted. Jamie's fear transformed into determination. She had embraced her role not merely as an educator but as a facilitator of understanding, a guide through the vast expanse of both history and shared human experience. The evaluators exchanged glances, nodding thoughtfully as they absorbed the weight of her statements. It was clear that Jamie was forging a new path, lending her students the very empowerment she once yearned for in her own educational journey. After a brief pause, Ms. Harrow, one of the harsher evaluators, leaned forward. I think we may need to consider how you can maintain this course while also incorporating clearer academic assessments, she said sturdily yet kindly. Jamie sensed a challenge but felt ready. This was her moment of growth and opportunity to not only advocate for her teaching philosophy but to bridge it with evaluative requirements. I am completely open to that. We can create assessments based not only on understanding historical context but also on how students articulate those connections. It can be a mix of traditional research and reflective personal narratives. The assessments can reflect both academic rigor and personal insight. The air was thick with engagement and collaborative spirit as Jamie's suggestion settled. She felt alive with a new fervor, the outcome of the meeting seemed within reach. Student stories could meet academic expectations, and Jamie was the bridge, a vital conduit transforming potential into reality. As the meeting came to a close, Jamie felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. The evaluators acknowledged the promise of her vision, the integration of personal narratives within the framework of historical education without compromising academic integrity. Days turned into weeks, and as the pilot began taking form, Jamie witnessed profound transformations not only in her students but herself. The classroom became a sanctuary of shared experiences and lessons, where once distanced figures of the past walked side by side with her students in the present, each narrative adding layers of richness. The moment she feared being reduced to the confines of strict assessment morphed into profound recognition of purpose. Students began embracing their stories, capturing the essence of vulnerability and growth she had modeled. As they delved into their projects, Jamie felt her heart swell with pride, the very same heart once gripped by doubt transformed into a vessel of strength. Months later, standing on stage alongside Principal Torres while receiving the award for innovative teaching, Jamie reflected on the journey she had embarked upon. Her transformation was one forged through perseverance, love for teaching, and above all, the conviction that stories are the threads that connect the human experience. Jamie Foster had not only reclaimed her passion, she had elevated history to live and breathe within her classroom. As the applause filled the auditorium, she recognized that true success was not merely accolades or curriculum adherence, it was knowing she had empowered her students to become both historians and storytellers. This was the legacy she aspired to uphold, a future where every student understood the importance of their own narrative in shaping the world around them. Now, Jamie stood at a precipice, transformed an educator fully aware of her capacity to foster resilience, connection, and understanding through the art of storytelling. And just as her journey of personal achievement brought fulfillment, she called out to all who recognized the struggle of fostering genuine connection within education. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Show your support at this moment. Embrace the journey of hope, resilience, and transformation. Don't wait even one more second to share.